The lights of the Geneva summit do not just shine today, they burn. Mark Carney, fresh off a sweeping electoral victory, strides into the marble-walled chamber with the quiet confidence of a man who has nothing left to prove, and everything left to defend. Across the polished mahogany, Karoline Leavitt waits, young, sharp, and unrelenting. She is not here for diplomacy. She is here for a showdown. In her hands, accusations. On her tongue, the fury of American populism. She interrupts, provokes, and stabs at Carney's policies with words like daggers. This is not a conversation. This is war in dialogue form. What follows is a battle of ideologies. Experience versus emotion. Unity versus division. Cameras flash. Officials shift. The world watches. This is no longer about trade. It is not about headlines. This is about sovereignty, survival, and a nation's pride. If you believe in Canadian strength, if you believe that calm beats chaos, type unity in the comments, because what happens next will define how history remembers them both. The sun cuts through the glass-paneled ceiling of the Geneva summit like a blade, spotlighting the silence inside the grand negotiation hall. Canadian flags flutter lightly near the far end of the room. Mark Carney stands beneath them, calm, steady, and unreadable, the weight of an entire nation stitched into the seams of his navy blue suit. Across the room, the American delegation enters, louder, brasher, and at their front, stepping forward like she owns the marble beneath her heels, is Karoline Leavitt. She does not wait to be introduced. She does not shake hands. Instead, she points at Carney and says clearly, loudly enough for microphones and murmurs to catch it, Canada's latest election wasn't a mandate. It was a mistake, and the world's going to pay for it. Bay. Room tightens. Journalists look up from their phones. Canadian officials bristle. Even American aides exchange quick glances. Carney does not flinch. He calmly takes his seat, adjusts his papers, then, without lifting his eyes, says, "We'll let the results speak louder than your opinion, Karoline." Leavitt laughs, sharp, sarcastic. "Sure, let's talk about results. Because while you were shaking hands, your economy tanked, your dollar dipped, your people lost jobs. And here you are acting like a savior." Carney raises his head. One eyebrow lifts. "And yet, 38 million Canadians disagreed. You're welcome to check the numbers. They're public." A few of his aides allow a smirk. The crowd noise ripples, slightly, but Karoline is not backing down. She leans forward, both palms on the table. "You're cozying up to global elites in Europe, Mark. And in doing so, you've forgotten what it means to put your own citizens first." Carney doesn't react. Instead, he lets the silence hang. Then, calmly, "Is that your strategy? Shout, interrupt, insult, and then call it patriotism?" Leavitt's smile fades just for a beat. The room picks up the shift. Even American officials glance sideways. God, the tone is changing. Then Carney adds, not loudly but with surgical precision, "If you want to debate global economics, Karoline, bring data, not drama." Twist, delivered. The silence is pierced by a sudden burst of camera shutters. Then, Karoline retorts, "All right, you want data? Let's talk about the 20% drop in Canadian export confidence since you took office." The pushback begins. Carney doesn't blink. "That number is real and temporary. We're already restructuring around energy exports to Korea and critical mineral deals with the EU." He folds his hands. "Our economy isn't shrinking. It's evolving. Try keeping up." One sentence, and the power shifts. The first punch came from Karoline. But the first wound? It lands squarely on her. Her aides whisper. A camera zooms in. Canadian officials, previously quiet, begin to sit taller. Carney leans back in his chair. The Geneva International Convention Center is a fortress of polished marble and watchful eyes. Cameras line every wall. Microphones dangle like vipers above the long oak table where the future of two nations is about to be carved, or crushed. The media has already picked a side. American reporters chatter in hushed tones. Canadian press hold their breath. Flashbulbs strobe like lightning as the door creaks open. Mark Carney enters alone. No entourage, no gestures, just presence. Dressed in a deep navy suit and flanked only by a silent wall of Canadian aides, Carney walks with the stillness of a man who has nothing to prove. His eyes scan the room once, not with arrogance but with intent. He pulls back his chair, adjusts his cuffs and waits, and then the air shifts. The second set of doors burst open. High heels click like gunfire across the marble floor. Karoline Leavitt storms in with the force of a headline and the grin of a fire starter. She's flanked by advisors and followed by cameras. Her energy doesn't enter the room, it invades it. Without hesitation, she circles the table and lands in her seat across from Carney, eyes locked on him like a missile. She does not blink. "So this is the man they chose," she says, loud. "Enough for the cameras." Carney offers a faint smile. "Good morning, Karoline." "Is it?" she fires back. "Because from what I've seen, it looks more like morning in North Korea than in Canada. Backroom deals, press restrictions, trade collapses, and a leader no one actually wanted. The aides stir. Canadian officials shift, tight-lipped. Carney doesn't move. The people spoke, loudly, democratically, respectfully. "But I understand those aren't familiar concepts in your world." A few gasps scatter across the room. Flash, flash, flash. Karoline leans forward. "You may have won the election, Mark, but you didn't win the country. You split it, and now you're selling what's left to Europe and calling it progress." Carney's fingers tap once on the table. "What you call splitting, we call reform. What you call selling, we call strategy. If it makes you uncomfortable, perhaps it's working." Her lips twitch, the smile fading. "Let's see how comfortable you are once I start exposing your numbers." He nods. "Let's." The room holds its breath. A storm is coming. One side is fueled by emotion, the other by calculation, and neither plans to blink first. The summit was supposed to begin with pleasantries, but Karoline Leavitt was never one for tradition. She leans in, elbows resting on the table, voice pitched just loud enough to override the buzz of reporters. Her words don't shout, they slice. "Let's get something straight before we waste everyone's time," she says, icy and precise. "You won, sure, but let's not pretend it was a landslide of love. You slipped into power through a fractured coalition, a tired party machine, and a public desperate for anyone who wasn't Trudeau. You were the rebound, not the choice." Carney does not react, but across the table, a Canadian aide clenches his pen tight enough to snap it. Another lowers her head and exhales through her nose. Karoline scans their faces like a lion watching prey flinch. "You talk about unity," she continues, "but your western provinces can't stand you. Alberta's bleeding jobs, Saskatchewan's threatening referendums. You didn't unify Canada, you duct-taped it long enough to pose for a photo." The Canadian delegation remains silent, trained, frozen in posture, but their stillness screams louder than movement. Carney calmly adjusts his microphone. "Are we listing grievances or solving problems today, Karoline?" She smirks. "I'm listing truths, and you're going to sit there and hear them, because your entire platform was built on borrowed credibility, from academics, from bureaucrats, from elites sipping espresso in Brussels while your farmers go bankrupt." Camera shutters go off. The American media leans in. A Fox News anchor mouths, "She's going for the throat." "And now you come here," Karoline adds, "pretending to represent a unified nation when half your country calls you an imposter." She pauses. Perfect timing, then drives the knife deeper. "Mark, you didn't lead a movement, you filled a vacancy." The room tightens. Canadian officials remain stone-faced, but beneath the table, hands shift, knees bounce. One aide's mouth opens just slightly, as if to push back, then closes again. Silence. Carney looks directly at her for the first time since she began. "Is this your strategy, Karoline? Humiliate the room, make a headline, clip it for Twitter later?" "No," she snaps. "My strategy is to call out fraud when I see it, before it infects more of North America." There it is, the Trumpism, packaged, sharp, delivered with full intent. For the first time, Carney blinks, not out of emotion, but calculation. He's reading the room, measuring the moment, letting her burn just long enough. Then he speaks, calm, even amused. "If it comforts you to think of democracy as fraud, then I won't waste time convincing you otherwise. But while you're busy branding your enemies, I'll be focused on building an economy that outlasts hashtags." Karoline opens her mouth, but Carney's words echo louder than her rebuttal. The tables have not turned yet, but the legs just cracked. Carney exhales, slow and measured. He lifts his glass of water, takes a single sip, and sets it down like a man who just let the storm pass, and now owns the room it left behind. "Elections," he begins, his voice smooth, "are not won by noise." The words land with more weight than volume. They're not won by clips or insults or hashtags. They're won by people, standing in lines, casting ballots, and deciding the future they want. He glances briefly across the room. not at Karoline but at the Canadian delegation. A few nod. 6.2 million Canadians voted for that future. 49 seats gained. A voter turnout increase of nearly 9%. Record youth engagement. And yes, majorities in provinces your party wrote off as lost causes. His fingers tap once on the table. That's not noise, Karoline. That's clarity. Leavitt scoffs, but the reaction feels forced now, like an actor repeating the same line in a scene that's already moved on. Carney continues, unbothered. You talk about the West? Let's talk. Alberta's unemployment dropped from 6.7% to 4.9% in my first 8 months. Saskatchewan's agricultural trade rose by 12% last quarter, highest since 2019. That's not a duct tape fix. That's movement. He shifts in his seat, not to posture, but to signal control. You accuse me of borrowing credibility. I call it building coalitions. You say I lean on global partners. I call it keeping Canada from economic isolation. The room shifts with him. Canadian. Aides who once sat tight now lean forward. The tension in their shoulders releases like they've just remembered who they work for. You want to make this about identity? That's your brand. I respect it, but I was elected to do something else. Govern. Karoline stares, jaw tight. Her smirk is gone. What remains is defiance, but no longer dominance. I don't tweet strategy, I implement it. I don't campaign while in office, I deliver. And while some are out here selling chaos for clicks, we're creating jobs, trade, and long-term growth. It's no longer a counterattack. It's a class. Karoline opens her folder, maybe to recover footing, maybe to prep her next line, but Carney's not done. And before the next headline writes itself, let me make this clear. I will not apologize for winning. I will not apologize for working with world leaders to strengthen Canada, and I will never apologize for being calm while others shout. For a moment, the room holds its breath, and then it shifts, undeniably. Cameras move back toward Carney. Canadian officials sit taller. Even some American aides look down at their notepads, unsure if the narrative they came in with still fits. Karoline looks up, her face composed, but her tempo changed. Carney doesn't wait for applause. He simply folds his notes and nods. Shall we continue? Karoline's voice sharpens as she rises slightly from her chair. You talk about international trade and climate strategy, Mark, but let's talk about something you clearly do not understand. Pride. The word hangs in the air. Canadian. Farmers are tired. Truckers are broke. Oil workers feel abandoned. And instead of standing beside them, you're busy shaking hands in Brussels and Seoul. Carney says nothing yet. He watches, calculating calm. You bend the knee to global forums and call it diplomacy. But while you're making pledges overseas, who's standing up for the people who built this country? A few gasps echo. Karoline senses momentum. What you call global leadership, millions of Canadians call betrayal. She throws a glance to the press, and they catch it, and I'm not afraid to say it. Canada's heartland is not interested in green partnerships or UN handshakes. They want food on their tables, fuel in their trucks, and a leader who speaks their language and not one who quotes the IMF. The room tightens. A few Canadian officials stir, clearly unsettled by how well her rhetoric lands. But Carney doesn't flinch. He straightens his papers, clears his throat once, and looks directly at her. You mistake volume for validation, Karoline. But let's address what you're really doing here. He leans forward. You're using patriotism to disguise isolation. You're dressing fear up as strength. But pride isn't about hiding from the world. It's about standing tall in it. Karoline opens her mouth, but Carney cuts through. You say I bend the knee? I say I build bridges. Because no farmer wins a trade war. No family pays rent with a Facebook post. And no country survives by shouting into its own echo chamber. The Canadian delegation sits taller. A ripple of silent agreement moves down their row. Carney continues, his voice steady but sharpened. Unity isn't submission, it's strategy. It's the understanding that we're stronger when we're not alone, that our values don't dissolve. When we collaborate, they amplify. His gaze locks on hers. You want to turn patriotism into a weapon. I want to turn it into policy. Boom. For the first time, Karoline hesitates. The momentum shifts. The reporters who were once locked on her now swivel toward Carney. One American aide exhales slowly, almost disappointed. Carney sees it, and he doesn't push further. He knows he's won the moment. He closes with precision. If your vision of Canada ends at its borders, mine begins beyond them. It's the first emotional win for Carney. Not because he raised his voice, but because he rose above hers. Karoline leans forward, a gleam in her eye like a wolf that smells weakness. Let's talk numbers, Mark. She slides a document across the table. Bold text, red highlights, charts meant to inflame. $1.2 trillion in debt. Consumer confidence. Down for 2 consecutive quarters. Foreign investment cooling. What exactly are you running? A country or a bonfire? The press perks up. Canadian officials exchange wary glances. The data is technically accurate, but incomplete. Karoline seizes the moment. Your obsession with Europe and global green funds has cost Canadians real wages, real jobs, real futures. You bailed out failing industries. You expanded tax credits without economic anchors. You subsidized clean tech that doesn't even have buyers yet. She flips another page. Theatrical, controlled, ruthless. We've seen this before. It's called economic fantasy, and you're selling it like it's vision. Carney does not move. His hand rests on a single folder. He taps it twice. Then he speaks. Are you finished? Karoline crosses her arms. For now. He nods once, opens the folder, and slides a document to the center of the table. This morning, Japan finalized a 5-year strategic trade agreement with Canada. Effective. Immediately, silence. Then, camera clicks. $82 billion in two-way trade, Carney continues, focused on critical minerals, EV battery components, and agricultural products from Alberta and Manitoba. Karoline's confidence flickers. For the first time, visibly, Carney leans in, his tone sharper now. That agreement secures over 40,000 new jobs by 2027 and locks in priority access for Canadian wheat, beef, and lithium exports. We're not borrowing credibility, Karoline, we're exporting it. Boom. Karoline opens her mouth, but hesitates. Carney doesn't let the silence die. While you were tweeting about selling out, my team was closing deals that make us indispensable to Asia's supply chain. He lifts another paper. Japan just announced Canada as its preferred supplier of rare earth metals, overtaking Australia. That's a global shift, reporters whisper. Aides lean in. Canadian officials, heads held higher. Carney finishes. So no, Karoline, this is not fantasy, this is policy. This is long-game economics. And this, he taps the folder, is what national strength looks like when it's built, not branded. Karoline swallows hard. She reaches for her notes, but they suddenly feel flimsy, small. Those numbers sound impressive, she replies, voice steadying, but they don't change the fact that everyday Canadians are still hurting. Food prices are up, gas is up, mortgage defaults are climbing. How does Japan help them? Carney's answer is immediate, because economic leadership isn't about tomorrow's grocery bill. It's about ensuring the store still exists. In 10 years, he leans back, composed. Short-term comfort is easy to sell. Long-term resilience? That takes guts. Karoline tries to respond, but the floor is gone. Her rhythm, broken. Her certainty, fractured. Her confidence, cracked. Exactly as planned. And for the first time, the room isn't asking if Carney is in control. It's wondering how long she can keep up. Karoline knows the headlines are slipping. The trade deal with Japan hit harder than expected. Her attack on debt missed the emotional mark, but she's not finished, not by a long shot. She adjusts her blazer, lifts her chin toward the cameras, and changes the game. The Prime Minister talks about trade routes and rare metals, she says, projecting for the press gallery. But let's talk about the people who can't afford to heat their homes this winter. Flash, flash, flash. Let's talk about single mothers in Winnipeg working 2 jobs and watching their rent triple. Flash. Let's talk about real pain, not theoretical projections. She turns slightly in her seat, just enough to give the live feeds her good side. The press eats it up. Her sound bites are clean, sharp, social media gold. But across the table, Carney does not flinch. He doesn't look at the cameras. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply speaks. I don't govern through hashtags, Karoline. Silence. And I don't pivot to pain when I lose on policy. Karoline narrows her eyes, but he's already moving forward. You want to talk about families? I do too, because they're the ones benefiting from the new national child care agreement that cut monthly daycare costs by 45% in the last year. He slides a sheet across the table. That's not a tweet. That's $6,000 a year back in parents' pockets. A pause. Then, housing. We've approved 37,000 new affordable units since March. 40% already under construction. Karoline interrupts. Units no one can qualify for because your income caps are out of touch. Carney fires back instantly. We adjusted those caps 2 weeks ago. You'd know that if you read the report instead of rehearsing clips. Boom. She tries again. You say you care about jobs, but Canada's manufacturing sector is bleeding. Carney replies, manufacturing added 11,000 new jobs last quarter. Not my data. Statistics Canada, again available to anyone not allergic to research. Karoline looks to the cameras, almost as if begging them to cut to commercial. But the room isn't laughing. Even American aides begin whispering. The rhythm is broken. Again, Carney leans forward, not smug, not aggressive, just surgical. You want to win Twitter? I want to win stability. You want applause? I want results. He closes the folder in front of him. The difference between us is simple. You perform, I prepare. It's clean. It's devastating. It's not made for sound bites, but it will dominate the headlines anyway. Karoline leans back, lips pressed together. The cameras still flash, but the moment isn't hers anymore, not today. Karoline shifts strategy. Again, her tone softens, her volume lowers, but her target, still sharp. Maybe your policies play well in Ottawa, Mark, she begins, but west of Ontario, you're a ghost. She lets the words settle, then pounces. Western Canadians don't feel seen. They don't feel heard. They feel abandoned by a government that remembers them only when the pipelines need defending or the tax revenue starts flowing. Her eyes sweep across the room, a deliberate, practiced move. Talk to the oil workers in Fort McMurray, the ranchers in rural Alberta, the small-town builders in Kelowna. Ask them if Mark Carney represents them. Carney says nothing yet. Karoline digs deeper. You drop $2 billion into electric buses for Toronto, another $1 billion into green rail for Quebec. But what did Alberta get? Carbon caps and lectures. Her voice rises. The West isn't bitter, Mark. It's just tired of being useful and ignored. And for a moment, just a moment, it lands. Even some Canadian aides look tense. One whispers to another. A few reporters nod, but Carney lifts a folder, one he's had sealed since the start. He opens it slowly, deliberately. Funny you bring that up, Karoline, he says, voice calm but surgical, because just this morning I signed off on the Western Economic Renewal Package, $30 billion, fully funded, multi-phase, launching in Q1. The room stills. He lays the document flat on the table. $12 billion for Alberta, focused on hydrogen infrastructure, pipeline modernization, and carbon capture initiatives. 48,000 jobs projected. $8 billion for British Columbia, clean port tech, supply chain acceleration, forest fire recovery, and another $10 billion across Saskatchewan and Manitoba, agritech innovation, water security, and northern connectivity. Silence. He looks directly at Karoline. You want to talk to Fort McMurray? I already did. You want to reach Kelowna? I've been there. Karoline leans in, tight-lipped. Let me guess, she snaps. Another UN-backed green package wrapped in pretty language and useless subsidies. Carney shakes his head once. This isn't global funding. It's Canadian dollars in Canadian hands, building Canadian futures. No slogans, no filters, just work. He points to the press. And before the misinformation hits your feed, this plan was developed alongside provincial leaders, local industry, and Indigenous partners. Over 230 consultations in 9 months. Unlike your speeches, this wasn't written overnight. Boom, a few aides smile. A Canadian official from Alberta, silent till now, nods slowly. Karoline sees it, so does the camera. She fires back weakly. Too little, too late. Carney responds instantly. Tell that to the families who start working again in February. And that's it. No yelling, no chest pounding, just raw, grounded policy. And results her side didn't see coming. Karoline's last emotional safe zone, breached. Her base, not gone, but shaken. The power has pivoted, and this time, it's permanent. Karoline smirks as she leans into the microphone. The room braces. They know that look by now. Let's stop pretending, she says, that Canada is still truly independent. A few heads turn. Cameras click. She continues, because from where I'm standing, and I mean this as a neighbor, Canada has become America's satellite state. Silence, followed by a collective intake of breath. Your economy, dependent on our imports. Your foreign policy, chained to our shadow. Your leadership? She glances at Carney, eager to please Washington before your own provinces. Murmurs rise. The term is outrageous, but compelling. Designed to trend, designed to trigger. Call it what you want, Prime Minister, but your global alliances are just cover for domestic submission, and if we're being honest, Canada would probably function better as the 51st state. No tariffs, no confusion, no identity crisis. The chamber cracks with whispers. One American. Aide raises an eyebrow. Even the press seems stunned. Carney doesn't blink. He waits, breathes once, then delivers. We partner, Karoline. We don't kneel. Silence. He stands slowly. You mistake diplomacy for dependency, cooperation for collapse, and respect for weakness. That says more about your worldview than mine. She tries to cut in, but Carney holds the floor. Our economy is resilient because we diversified. Our defense is strong because we allied. And our values are unshakable because we wrote them, not borrowed them. He steps forward, deliberate, powerful. You call us a satellite. I call us a sovereign nation with influence in every G7 capital, not just one. He turns to the press, voice steady. The only thing more dangerous than arrogance is arrogance wrapped in ignorance. Boom. The air is electric. Canadian aides nod slowly. American staffers? Quiet. A few visibly uncomfortable. Karoline tries to claw the moment back. You're avoiding the truth, Mark. You rely on the U.S. for trade, defense, energy. Admit it. We keep your country afloat. Carney doesn't flinch. And yet, every time your country needs fresh water, rare minerals, or stable energy, it comes north. He leans in. The difference is we don't frame that as weakness. We frame it as reality and responsibility. One reporter whispers, "That's going viral." Karoline exhales sharply. Her momentum, gone. Her provocation, diffused. And the phrase 51st state backfired hard. Carney sits back down, calm as ever. You want to mock our independence, Karoline? That's fine, because every insult reminds Canadians exactly why we stand on our own. Karoline shifts again, this time from ideological jabs to economic warfare. Let's get real, she says. Without American trade, your economy collapses, and that includes energy. She sits back with a smug tilt. Your oil flows south, your gas warms our homes, and your hydro lights up our cities. If we decide to change the rules, you're done. The threat is unmistakable. A few American aides nod, quietly, smugly. They've heard this before. And usually it lands, but Carney's face doesn't move. He calmly flips a tab on his binder. I was hoping you'd bring this up. Karoline frowns slightly, not expecting that. Carney stands, pacing slowly in front of the table. When he speaks, it's like a lecture with bite. Let's walk through that fantasy, shall we? Canada supplies over 90% of Vermont's electricity. We power 60% of New York's imported hydro. Our oil supports 1 in 3 households in Michigan. Directly, he pauses. One step forward. Cut us off, you don't hurt Canada. You shut down the Northeast. Reporters blink. The murmurs grow. Carney's not done. New Hampshire? Blackouts in winter. Massachusetts? Grid strain within a week. Ohio? Supply shortages before the next election cycle. Karoline leans forward, clearly irritated. Then why do your prices spike when we change our terms? If you're that stable, prove it. Carney turns, eyes locked. Because we're a partner, not a puppet. And every time you threaten us, you expose just how dependent you are. She tries to respond, but he cuts her off cleanly. You don't threaten your power grid, Karoline. You protect it. Boom. The line hits hard, like a thunderclap in the marble chamber. Canadian aides nod. Even the Americans go still. Carney returns to his chair but doesn't sit. Instead, he delivers the final nail. Canada's not just an energy exporter. We're an energy stabilizer. Without us, your voters freeze, your markets choke, and your infrastructure fails. He steps back. So unless you're planning to hand out candles and wool blankets in Manhattan this winter, I suggest we retire the cut them off narrative. Karoline tries to pivot. You're acting like we couldn't survive without you. Carney raises one eyebrow. Could you? The silence speaks louder than anything. One American journalist taps his mic. He just flipped the leverage. Carney seals it. We're expanding energy deals with Europe. Asia wants in next. We don't need the U.S. market to survive. But based on your grid, you might need us to keep the lights on. And with that, he finally sits. Calm, complete, unshaken. Karoline glares, but even she knows that round is over. And she didn't just lose. She walked into a trap. Karoline's voice sharpens as she launches her next strike, desperate to win back ground. And let's not forget, she says, under your leadership, unemployment has soared to 9.3%, the highest in a decade. Her words hit the air like a slap. Reporters look up. Some start typing. One American aide smirks, already drafting the quote for Twitter. But across the table, Carney's expression doesn't change. His hand moves slowly toward a binder, the thick one, already bookmarked. He opens it, finds the page, then speaks, calm but ice cold. That number is false. Karoline blinks. Excuse me? Carney looks directly at her. Canada's unemployment rate, as of last month, is 5.4%, down from 6.8% when I took office. He lifts the page so the press can see it. StatsCan, public, verified, downloadable. A low ripple of awkward laughter moves through the press gallery. One reporter coughs to hide a grin. Karoline freezes. Well, your office, your policies still led to mass layoffs in Ontario. Carney doesn't let her finish. Wrong again. Ontario just reported a 3.7% job growth this quarter, second highest since 2018. He leans forward. Facts, Karoline, not fury. She scrambles. Manufacturing, at least, is down, and you can't deny that. Carney doesn't even look at the page this time. Up 1.4%, nationally, led by automotive parts and clean tech. Boom. Karoline exhales sharply. Her rhythm? Gone. Her edge? Blunted. The tension in the room spikes, not because Carney raised his voice, but because he didn't need to. His data spoke louder than her delivery. He folds his binder closed. Leadership starts with facts. Karoline looks down, just briefly, but long enough for everyone to see it. The aides on her side avoid eye contact. Canadian officials sit taller. Carney adds softer now, almost surgical. We can disagree on vision. That's healthy. But when you lie, to this room, to the press, to the Canadian people, you don't lead, you campaign. Her jaw tightens. She opens her mouth, but nothing comes out. And in that moment she looks less like the firebrand the headlines promised, and more like a figure running out of fire. Carney finishes the round with a quiet line, but it hits like a gavel. A mistake in private is a slip. A lie in public is a strategy. The press scribbles furiously. The cameras zoom in. The room shifts again. And this time, there's no doubt who holds it. Carney stands slowly. No papers, no binder, just presence. The room is still buzzing from Karoline's stumble. The tension remains thick, but now it leans in his direction, and he knows it. He walks to the edge of the table and places both hands flat. Before we conclude, he says, there's one final announcement I've been holding. Karoline looks up in alert, eyes narrowing. Carney meets her gaze for only a moment, then turns to the chamber. Today, after 15 months of negotiations, disagreements, and 100 closed-door sessions, I am proud to announce that Canada's provinces, Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and 6 more, have signed the National Internal Trade Pact. Silence. Effective immediately, Canada is slashing interprovincial trade barriers by 60%, the largest reduction in our country's history. Then the room explodes. Gasps. Applause. Some stand instinctively. Even reporters forget their notebooks. For a moment, Karoline's face freezes. Carney raises his voice only slightly to be heard over the noise. This isn't just economics. This is identity. This is proof that our provinces, despite political differences, language divides, and regional wounds, are choosing unity over ego. He lets it settle. Western resources will now flow east faster. Eastern tech will now scale west quicker. The North is no longer isolated. The South is no longer crowded. He leans back. For the first time in decades, Canada isn't just federally united. We're economically united. We move as one. A Canadian official from Alberta stands and claps, then one from Quebec, then Ontario. The room rises, section by section, standing ovation. Karoline doesn't move. She sits completely still, her eyes scanning the floor, her fingers wrapped tightly around her pen. This wasn't a policy win. It was a legacy-defining moment, a mic drop, live and broadcast. In 4K, Carney nods to his aides. No smile, no bravado, just a quiet calm, the kind that only comes after years of being underestimated. Then he turns back to Karoline. You spent this summit warning me that I'd fractured Canada, but today, Canada just stitched itself tighter than it's been in a generation. She exhales. Not in defiance, in resignation. You said I was a ghost in the West. Turns out I was building bridges. You said I was a global puppet. Turns out I just led one of the most powerful domestic alliances in Canadian history. He takes a breath, his final breath of the summit. This isn't about me, Karoline. This is about the idea that we are stronger together. even when it's hard, even when it's loud, even when some people in this room want to tear it apart. And with that, he steps back. The applause continues. Cameras flash in rhythm. Reporters rush to file what will soon become front-page headlines. Karoline slowly sets her pen down. Her eyes remain locked on the table. No retort, no performance, just silence, because deep down, she knows she didn't just lose the room, she lost the story. The room is still trembling from the applause when Karoline Leavitt rises from her seat. Her face is locked in a tight expression, somewhere between anger and disbelief. She does not speak. She does not look back. With sharp, echoing footsteps, she turns and storms out of the summit hall, her exit louder than any line she delivered. No one follows. The cameras do not shift. The press does not chase. All eyes stay fixed on the one man still standing at the center of it all, Mark Carney. He does not react. He does not gloat. He simply watches the door close behind her, then exhales. There is no celebration in his eyes, only focus. Only the calm of a man who came to lead, and did. He gathers his notes, closes his binder, adjusts his sleeves with the same care he had when he walked in. Not a single move wasted. He steps away from the table. No applause now, just silence. A respectful silence. The kind reserved for a man who has said everything he needed to say, and said it well. The delegates nod. The aides stand a little straighter, and as Carney walks out, the chamber feels changed. Not because someone shouted, but because someone led. No theatrics, no slogans, no spin, just truth, just facts, just one voice, steady through the storm. If you believe calm beats chaos, if you believe leadership still matters, if you believe Canada just had its strongest voice in the room, type Carney in the comments below. Let the world know who you stand with. What happened inside that chamber was not just a political clash, it was a reminder that leadership is not about who yells the loudest, or who commands the most clicks, or who can trend for 24 hours. It is about who can walk into a room filled with noise and bring silence, who can face chaos and then choose clarity, who can take pressure and still deliver peace. Mark Carney did not match fire with fire. He met it with facts. He met it with focus. He met it with a steady hand, the kind this generation of politics almost forgot existed. Karoline Leavitt came with fury. She came with rehearsed sound bites, with viral ammo, with firebrand confidence, but she left that room quieter than she entered it, not because she was silenced, but because truth doesn't shout. It stands, and when it stands long enough, it wins. We learned something else too. We learned that Canada is no longer the polite bystander. It's not the 51st state. It's not a frozen satellite orbiting another nation's gravity. It is a sovereign voice, a global player, a federation of provinces that can clash, debate, disagree, and still unite when it matters most. We saw what it means when Alberta and Quebec align, when East and West shake hands instead of shaking fists. We saw that unity is not weakness. It is the hardest, strongest thing a country can achieve, because it's easy to divide. It's easy to inflame. But to unite, that takes leadership, real leadership. Mark Carney didn't just win a debate. He reminded a country of what it still is, and what it still can be. If you believe in that kind of leadership, if you believe diplomacy still matters, if you believe in Canada, loud, proud, and unshaken, type Carney in the comments below. And remember, from Halifax to Vancouver, we are one Canada, unbreakable.